Cold mornings, frosty windows. Yup, it's that time of year. So treat yourself and start your day with a cup of fresh roasted Sterling Roastery coffee, sourced from around the world and roasted multiple times a week for unbeatable freshness. It's the kind of warm-up every sports fan deserves this holiday season. And right now, you can win one of 3 $50 Sterling gift cards, perfect for gifting or building your own winning lineup of Java in the morning. Enter today at sportshistorynetwork.com/giveaways so you can wake up, warm up, and Sterling up this holiday season. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/giveaways.
125 defining moments, one legendary league. This is Darren Hayes of the Pigskin Dispatch podcast, and a great book is out right now, NFL Moments, 125 icons and stories that define the NFL. It's a definitive visual history of the National Football League, packed with iconic images and untold stories behind the game's biggest plays and its greatest players. From the early legends like Red Grange to today's stars like Patrick Mahomes, this book is a touchdown for fans who crave more than just stories. So give your football bookshelf a Hall of Fame upgrade or snag a holiday gift for that NFL history buff on your shopping list. Pick up NFL Moments, available now at your favorite bookseller.
This is Basketball History 101 with Rick Loayza.
Welcome back to Award-winning Basketball History 101, part of the Sports History Network. I am your host, Rick Loayza, and this is the podcast where we bring to life some of the forgotten stories from basketball history. We are bringing old school basketball to a new school audience, and today we bring you the story of the American Basketball League. Now, this is not to be confused with the ABA from the 1960s and 70s. That was the ABA. This is the ABL, the original ABL. There was an ABL in the 1950s that lasted for just a single season, but this is the original ABL. And now that we have all that straight, here we go. The ABL ran from 1925 until 1931. While it was not the first professional league, it was the first major professional league. So let me explain what I mean by that. In the early 1900s, professional leagues started to pop up in East Coast cities like Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C., and elsewhere. However, these leagues were very small in their geography. Each of these cities had anywhere between 8 and 12 teams, and they were all located in that one city. So Boston, for example, had 10 teams that were all located in different neighborhoods around Boston. It was really just a local city league, although the players were getting paid, and that is what made them professional. Now later, you had statewide leagues like the Massachusetts League or the Pennsylvania League or the New York League, where teams were spread out across an entire state. Now, there were a number of factors as to why the leagues stayed so small in the early 1900s. A big part of it was travel expenses. The players were not making enough money to justify traveling from, say, New York down to Washington, D.C. just for one game. Only the super wealthy owned a car back then. Theoretically, they could have taken a train, but that would have meant staying overnight. And these players all had day jobs back then. They played basketball in the evenings or on weekends to supplement their income from a regular job. They could not afford to miss a day of work to go and play basketball in a different city. But what if there was a league that paid the players enough money that they could travel without having to worry about a job during the season? This might attract the best players around and make the league something really worth watching. Well, a man named Joe Carr had that very idea. Carr was the president of the National Football League, or the NFL, which today is the richest sports league in the world based on total revenue. If you are listening from outside the United States, you may already know that the American football is the most popular sport in America. Of course, we are not talking about today though. We are literally talking about 100 years ago when the NFL was the second most popular sports league in America behind baseball. But Joe Carr's idea was ahead of its time. What if they could build a basketball league using the same model that they had for the football teams? So Joe Carr gathered a couple of the NFL team owners along with other successful businessmen in different cities to create a 9-team league. The cities chosen for this first season in 1925 were Brooklyn, Washington, Cleveland, Rochester, Fort Wayne, Boston, Chicago, Detroit, and Buffalo. Originally, the owners were upset, and rightfully so, when they found out that the team known as the Original Celtics would not be joining their league. The Original Celtics were one of the most popular barnstorming teams around, and having them join this league would have been a financial boost. But the Original Celtics decided to turn down the invitation and stay independent. And if you want to go back to one of our earliest episodes, it's episode 28, we did an entire profile on the Original Celtics. Anyway, the league began with the 9 teams that I mentioned, and the players were paid $1,500 per month, which was like getting $28,000 per month in 2025. That was huge money, certainly the biggest basketball contracts around in 1925. And that was enough to convince some of the best players around to join this new league. And I am talking about guys like Rusty Saunders, Honey Russell, and Nat Hickey. Now, those names may not mean much to you today, but back in 1925, it was like saying Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Anthony Edwards, Nikola Jokic, and Luka Doncic. I mean, those guys that I just mentioned from the 1920s were the superstars of their day. About halfway through that first season, the Boston team had to drop out of the league due to financial trouble. The league had to continue with just 8 teams. So what they decided to do was to divide the season into halves. Then, the best record from each half of the season would play each other in a championship round. Brooklyn won the first half with a record of 12-4, while Cleveland won the second half with a record of 13-1. But what if the same team had the best record in both halves of the season? What then? Honestly, I am not sure what would have happened. Thankfully, the league never had to face that situation. At the end of the season, it was Brooklyn and Cleveland in a best-of-5 championship series, and Cleveland swept Brooklyn 3-0 to become the first ABL champions in the spring of 1926. And the league leader in scoring was a tie between Rusty Saunders, who played for both Brooklyn and Washington at different points of the season, and Honey Russell from Cleveland. They led the league with 7.4 points per game. Yes, 7.4 points per game was enough to lead the entire league in scoring. Of course, this was a day when an entire team might only score in the low 30s for the whole game. However, by all accounts, it was a successful season, which led to a second season. And in the spring of 1927, it was again Cleveland and Brooklyn in the championship round, but this time it went the other way. This time, Brooklyn swept Cleveland 3-0. And leading the way in league scoring was Rusty Saunders with 399 total points in 42 games. But it was Benny Borgman from Fort Wayne who had the highest average of 11.2 points per game. But Borgman played fewer games and did not score as many total points. But then something really big happened and the league got a real boost. For the third season, starting in 1927, the Original Celtics decided to join the ABL. And this was going to help the whole league because the Original Celtics had a huge fan base and that would help sell tickets everywhere they played. The Brooklyn and Washington teams decided to merge together into a single team. Now, with the addition of the Original Celtics, it kept the league at 8 teams for that third season. And the Original Celtics entered the league representing New York City, since that's where they were based. But all of that excitement disappeared quickly for the league. Having the Original Celtics as part of the league actually backfired. The Celtics were so dominant that they led the league with 40 victories. The next closest team was Philadelphia with only 30 victories. Fans were not showing up as the league owners had hoped. For example, if you lived in Rochester and you knew that the Celtics were coming to play your team, the fan simply stayed home because what was the point of buying a ticket to a game just to see your favorite team get destroyed by the Original Celtics? In other words, the Celtics were just too good, and fans lost interest because they already knew the outcome of the game before it even started. The original Celtics were going to win. The fans, and more importantly, league owners, were asking that the original Celtics be dismantled as a team and that their players be distributed across the other teams in the league. They needed to restore competitive balance. And they have a point. The thing that sells tickets in any league, in any sport, is the idea that your team has a legitimate chance at success. Fans want to see competitiveness in their league. When one team is just tearing through the league and destroying everyone, fans tend to lose interest. And the Celtics won the 1928 ABL title. And then the league did exactly what everyone was asking them to do. They broke up the original Celtics. Even the owner of Madison Square Garden was part of the effort. The Garden is where the original Celtics played their home games, and the Garden was going to ban them from playing there. Everyone ganged up on the Celtics. And the real winner of all of this, once the dust settled, was the Cleveland team. They were able to get 3 of the original Celtics players, Joe Lapchick, Pete Barry, and Dutch Dennert. We once did a whole episode on Dennert. It was episode 60, and how he invented the concept of the pivot. Well, Cleveland took their new fortune of having 3 of the best players join their team, and they won the 1929 ABL title. They swept Fort Wayne 4-0 in the championship round. And then Cleveland won again in 1930. But at that point, even the old Celtics players were starting to age and lose skill. In what would be the final season of the ABL in 1931, the Brooklyn team was able to defeat the Fort Wayne team in a championship round, winning 4-2. And that was the end of the American Basketball League. Financial losses were starting to pile up, and when the league first started in 1925, the American economy was booming. By 1931, America was 2 years into the Great Depression. The average American did not have extra money in their budget to buy tickets to a basketball game. They were just trying to pay their rent and feed their kids. But the ABL did leave a legacy that set up a blueprint for all of the basketball leagues of the future, including the NBA. One of the first things that they did was to have players sign season-long contracts, and today we take this for granted. But back in the 1920s, players were paid by the game, with no contract in place. This means that players would switch teams from week to week or even from game to game. They might play for one team on a Friday night and then play for a different team on Saturday night, depending on how much money each team was offering. The ABL put a stop to this with the season-long contract. Also, rules were standardized and the officials had to follow the same rules in all games. Again, this is something that we take for granted today, but 100 years ago, different cities and different states had slightly different rules. Some places did a center jump after every made basket, and other cities did not. Every game was so different because you played by the home team's rules. Well, with the ABL, there was no more of that. Standard rules for everybody. They also banned cages, and you might be thinking, what is a cage? Well, it is exactly what you think it is. Because basketball in the 1920s often had physical altercations between fans and the opposing players, they decided to put literal cages around the court. In some cases, they were made of simple netting, but in other cases, they used chicken wire to keep the players separated from the fans. But the ABL banned these contraptions. The ABL also made backboards a requirement. Once again, basketball back then was different. Only some courts had backboards. The ones that did not simply had a basket attached to a pole with no backboard, but the ABL required backboards on all courts. Now, as the league went on, they added rules about players fouling out after 5 fouls. They also created the 3-second rule for offensive players just camping out in the lane. They also made a rule against two-handed dribbling, which was still allowed in some places. They also opened things up for teams to sign players out of the university ranks. In reality, most teams stuck with veteran professionals, few of whom had actually attended university. The ABL was the pioneer of the leagues that came after them, like the NBL, the ABA, and the NBA. Even though the American Basketball League only lasted 6 seasons, they left behind a legacy and a model for future basketball leagues. Many of these ABL cities later became NBA cities with new teams, and the Boston Celtics named themselves after those original Celtics. So hats off to the American Basketball League and their place in the development and pioneering of major professional basketball. Well, that is it for today. Join us next time when we share another story from basketball history. That's next time on Basketball History 101, part of the Sports History Network, the headquarters of Sports Yesteryear. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com to find out more about this and other sports history podcasts. If you like what you hear, please hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcast, and check out our page on Facebook. It's called Basketball History 101 Podcast. There you will find short historical posts, and I'll also announce there when new episodes come out. I want to thank my producer and editor, Jacob Loayza. Join us each week as we continue to mine the history of basketball for more great stories from the past. Take care, and see you soon.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. You did not see their faces on the Wheaties boxes, nor did they have the headlines, but they were breaking barriers, one pitch at a time. The integration of minor league baseball, a history and player register, 1946 to 1959, by Rick Swain and Gary C. Fink, shines a light on the overlooked heroes who paved the way for future legends. From dusty bus rides to hostile crowds, these players fought for a place in a game that did not want to see them win. More than history, it's a tribute to courage, perseverance, and the power of a game to change. Honor their legacy today and grab a copy of The Integration of Minor League Baseball at your favorite bookseller.